Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Autism Our Story podcast. Today, I have the opportunity to chat with Judy Stoltz.
Judy's son Tyler is an autistic young man who communicates through pointing to letters on a letterboard. Throughout this interview, you're going to be hearing from Tyler's own words and experiences as his mother reads his answers to some of the questions that I sent him for this interview.
I'm so excited to chat with you today, Judy. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and we're going to start from there.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you for having me. My name's Judy, and my son Tyler's 23. He's the youngest of 4 boys in our family, and he identifies as a non-speaking autistic. He does have words, but they are very unreliable, and he has told us many times to ignore his words. I used to be an HR manager and spent a lot of hours out of the house. And during COVID, retired and started focusing on art, which I've always done through the years. And in the last about 6 months, I've been trying to figure out how to kind of work together my art with being an advocate for spellers. And so that's where we're at. Tyler started spelling just about 2 years ago. And so it's been a pretty quick and fast and wonderful journey.
That's amazing. How did you come about spelling?
I think like many of us, especially with older kids, is we kind of get to a point where we feel like we've tried everything. That, people, for 20 years were saying, read this, try this. And we had done so much. And we'd seen little improvements, but it's crazy because the ones that were really like approved by experts weren't really the ones that were helping.
Yeah.
And so it'd been a number of years since I'd really like picked up a new book or tried anything new. We just kind of had gotten into like a routine that we were like, okay, this is our life. This is what it's going to be. Like we've tried so much and there didn't seem to be anything that was really that different besides like new supplements or something like that. And one day I get an email from my sister and she had copied somebody, and it was my brother's best friend's girlfriend who was like, I read this book and it's groundbreaking. I'm thinking of becoming a certified teacher or, getting certificate in this. And I think it might really help Judy and her son. And I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
But something about it and her like intensity in the email was like, okay, I'll order the book. And she had referred, the book by J.B. Hanley and his son, Jamie, of Underestimated, which many of us have read. And
yeah.
I still remember I was in Palm Springs with my mom and sister, and I'm outside on a couch, and I that was the book I brought to read, just nice casual reading for the weekend. And I was just crying. I couldn't stop the tears because there was something about the way that JB explained. He said things that we're afraid to admit to ourselves, yet alone say out loud. That I was just like, okay, there's something here. And halfway through the book, I'm Googling spelling to communicate.
Yeah.
And like when he said he was having to fly to Virginia, I was like, oh, that's not going to probably happen because Tyler hasn't been on a plane since he was 6 years old. But when he said that there was something in Newport Beach, which is California, and, a couple of hours south of me, I was like, I can do Newport Beach. So, so I sent an email to, IASC or IASC. I'm not sure what's the right way to refer to it. And ended up with, said, who's a practitioner in Southern California? And they gave me a list from like Sacramento South to San Diego. And it was funny because if you know California, Sacramento's like 6 hours from me. Okay, so, but there ended up being somebody less than 10 miles. and sent an email, and she immediately responded, and we got a date set, and that's where it all started. And so,
wow,
yeah,
that's
it was.
amazing. And so, how old was he at that point?
He had just turned 21 when we had our first meeting with our practitioner. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. So you meet with a practitioner and you get started. When did he finally become an open speller?
So it's interesting because that's, a question that so many people ask in the different forums, right?
Yeah.
And I've come to the decision, it's not just an amount of time, of months. I look at it as like hours, is because
Okay.
because I have some PTSD because Tyler would get very dysregulated with me. And it was very hard for me to do the boards with him. And he wanted to do it with his dad, but his dad doesn't like to follow the rules. And then he said,
Yeah.
when dad doesn't follow the rules, it makes me really hard to spell with anybody. So we nipped that. So he was really only spelling with his practitioner. And so, and it may not seem like much, but it was about 8 months that I felt like it was really like an open, significant, personal, not just like there were definitely some open things that he had said that were interesting, but not
personal,
not super personal.
Yeah.
And so when I kind of looked back at like, okay, what were the dates and times that we met, and probably like 60 or 70 hours, which really isn't that much.
Yeah.
We were meeting 2 to 3 times a week. And there were things, like I said, there were plenty of things that he had said open beforehand, but the first really significant thing that he had spelled to us, and I've actually made like an Excel sheet with.
Wow, sweet. I love that.
With a bunch of things that he has spelled over the years. But like the thing was, he kept asking us to go to like a middle school that he'd never actually attended. And I asked her, can you ask him what this is about? Like, and that was one of those things, like, and that's why I think it was the most significant, because we'd never like asked him a question or to explain something at that point. And what he had said was, Mom, I love you. I don't want to go to Apollo, which was his current day program. So he had already been done with high school, and this was in California till 22. They still do like life skills up until the age of 22. So I don't want to go to Apollo. I realize it's much needed respite for you and Dad, but I want more from life. I know that this other school is not an option for someone my age, but it was my only way to communicate.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, I was just like, and I wasn't even in the room when that happened. And his CRP sent me a message and said, call me, I need to tell you something. And I was just like sobbing. It took me like half an hour to like recover and get back to what I was doing, because I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is crazy. He still had a year left in the program. And it was literally like a week before he was supposed to start up again. So then when I met with her and him together, just a couple days later, said, do you want to, well, what do you want to do? If we were not going to go back to that, do you want to go to Moorpark College, a local community college?
Yeah.
And he was like, college. And I pulled it up on my phone and showed him, like where it was. And, like talk about like your life, like making like a huge change, is that you couldn't go alone, but we figured it out. They have a great program that helps set in place what the accommodations need to be, but there's nobody to go to school with him.
Okay.
So suddenly it was Mom and Dad trying to figure out like, okay, I guess we're going back to school. And so, but he was just so much happier. Yeah. I'm so glad that, that we made that change.
Yes.
Spelling has just changed so much in our lives that.
Yes. Yeah, I would love to know. So, what are some changes that you saw in him? How did spelling impact his quality of life?
It's changed everything because now he has input. Well, one, he started taking college classes. He did that for 2 semesters, and then he decided his spelling wasn't robust enough to really reflect what he, on his tests, what he knows.
Okay.
So he decided he wanted to take a little bit of time off. So he went to classes last fall and spring. But this most recent fall and spring, we haven't been doing classes, but he's starting to verbally ask for it again. And we haven't had a chance to confirm, like, is he ready to start back up again? Yeah. But his very first class, his first request to take was Latin.
Okay.
And
wow.
And why Latin? Because it's the root of all languages, which he says he has, that's, at one point we asked him, like, what's something that might surprise others to know about you? And he said that I learn languages very easily. And we asked him, what languages do you know? And he starts saying, Latin and Hebrew and Spanish and German and most languages except Russian, which is interesting. Because, and then he continued, because I just haven't been exposed to it.
Oh my goodness!
I just haven't been exposed to it, and I'm like, okay, well, where have you been exposed to all these other things? Because I don't know anybody who speaks Chinese. I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
We do actually have a church member who's from Russia, so maybe, but really, he hasn't.
Wow. Has he shared how he learns them?
There's another speller, Danny with Words, does the podcast. And one of the things he or his sister had commented on was like fast reading and not speed reading, but almost like, I'm going to say like picture reading. That wasn't how they described it at all. But I asked Tyler, like, he's always flipped through books very quickly. And it's, he asked to buy books. He asked to go to the library, and he'll like kind of flip through it, and not every single page. And then he'll put it down, and he never touches it again.
He's good. Oh my goodness. Wow.
And so we asked him, and he said, when I'm looking through a book, he says, if there's something I see that I don't understand, I'll process it, but I file everything away by category to recall later as needed.
Wow. That is amazing.
So I don't know. And like the Hebrew, we had been to a speller's movie, that somebody was sponsoring at a local temple. Yeah. And we had already seen it a number of times by this point, but it was, but thought, just want to be there and support the local community. And, and they had books in the pews, and I don't know if they call them pews. And he was flipping through it. And I had even said to my sister, I said, he's learning Hebrew right now.
He's learning. Yes. Oh my goodness.
And it was like a couple of days later that he's like, yeah, I know Hebrew. I was like, oh, he probably.
Wow.
And I joke about it, and I say, I barely know English. So
yeah.
How am I going to quiz him on it? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very impressive. I noticed with my son listens to Japanese music. So he has a phone that only has the Apple Music app on it. I noticed that he has a whole file that is just Japanese music, and he'll flip through it like he can read it and choose exactly the one he wants. Yeah. And it's like, I just know he can read it, but how he's just 6, and I've never taught. I don't know all those languages. And he wants his favorite shows. He likes to change the languages to Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, and others that I don't even know, because on the Disney app, it comes written in that language. So you won't know what language it is. And it's written in their, how do you say it? The way they write.
In their lettering. Yeah.
They're littering, yeah. So yeah, sometimes, yeah, I've had to look it up, and it was hard because I don't know how to put that lettering in there to find out what it is. But yeah, so
And
I'm
it's
thinking maybe he's learning all these
he knows those languages because like my son, when he was, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, and one day I was like doing like a talk to text into my phone, and
languages.
it was automatically, and this is like way, because so that's been like 15 years ago, right? So this is
Okay.
way before like they had all these like language apps and things, or at least
Apps.
that were
Hmm.
automatic on your phone. I was doing talk to text in my text app, and it was putting it into Spanish. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I recognized enough of the words to know it was Spanish. And after trying it 2 or 3 times, I'm like, Tyler?
Yes.
And
Wow.
I'm like, you need to come and change my phone
Change it.
because he had evidently changed like the language on other stuff, and I didn't know where to go to fix it. And
Yeah.
he'd done that a few times on the TV too. So I know
Yeah.
what you're saying is like, yeah, when it says languages in German, I don't know that that's languages, even if it's
Yeah.
an alphabet I recognize, I didn't recognize the language. So
Yeah.
well, and
Yeah.
that's
My
something
son
that
has done that.
and that's something that hasn't been discussed, a lot in the different pages that I've been in. But somebody
Yeah.
mentioned maybe a year ago hyperlexia,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think that our kids, have that. Like they
Yeah.
like see something and they process it and they understand it
Yeah.
without any explanation. And
Yeah. It's just easy for them.
mhm,
Yeah. Yeah. My son has once, he likes to use my Mac, which now I'm really using for this, my podcasting. So he cannot have it anymore. But he once changed my whole YouTube app to, I don't remember what language that was, but I just needed it gone because I was like, how, I don't know what I'm doing. So I was having to mirror using a whole different laptop to find what I'm doing to change the language. It was so hard, but I had thought maybe if I just give it to him, he'll do it. But I needed to use it right away.
yeah,
He just, when I gave it to him, he just wanted to he was able to find his shows and maneuver it in that language. I was like, I need it changed. I don't need it to stay that way. He thought,
yeah.
oh, I can just use this. So it's good to know that they actually know these languages. That's amazing.
Sometimes people look at our spellers, especially once they become open. And I've heard this a
Hmm.
lot of times as comments, like with the movie, like, okay, they're older and they're so behaved and they're sitting down and they're
Yeah.
quiet. Um, and, and even when they meet my son now, like they didn't see him 2 years, 5 years ago. So Tyler wrote, it scares me to think about what my life might look like if spelling wasn't introduced to me when it was. I most certainly would be living in a home. At that time in my life, my dysregulation was so severe. I was a real danger to myself and my family, especially my mom. I was living in a constant state of fear and frustration. As my family learned what I was experiencing, my regulations gradually started to improve. Everything about my life has changed since spelling. Most importantly, my family knows me now and knows how much I love and appreciate them. My days are filled with activities I never imagined, like surfing, college classes, and best of all, friends.
Wow.
So,
That is,
so yeah, when people say like what has changed, I'm like everything, is
yeah.
just something as little as like, yeah, having friends. And he ran into a friend from his high school um, a few weeks ago, and he actually spelled. He's like, I want Kaito and his dad to come watch me spell. I want his parents to get him spelling. He needs
To
a voice.
see. Oh my goodness.
And
Wow.
and he said, it may look like we weren't thrilled to see each other, but we were.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Oh, that's
and that's something
amazing.
he hasn't seen in probably 2 or 3 years. And yeah, so yeah, I just count to every person that we that we help find, spelling,
Yes, that they're able to
is that
spell.
it's a miracle,
Yeah.
and I want them to all to, how do we get it out there? And so I've been trying to, help.
Yes. So, how was school for Tyler? Did he go to a public school or a private school, or was he homeschooled?
Tyler went to a public school, and he was diagnosed before he turned 3 years old. And so once he turned three, he was able to start going to school. And they had a lot of different programs, and including sensory rooms, and lots of. He never really required a one-on-one, but lots of people in the classroom helping out. And he
Yeah.
always seemed to enjoy going to school. There was a few times where no school, no school, but then he'd, still like going. But like one of the things, when we talked about like the being open, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at some of my notes. So shortly after he said that he didn't want to go to Apollo anymore, he was asked, like, if you were going to dedicate your life to being, to advocating for a cause, what would you dedicate it to? And he said, ending special education.
Wow. Okay.
Or changing it. I would actually teach things. And, so, that was one of the first times that he really like voiced an opinion about school. And,
Yeah.
one of the things that he's expressed over time is that people thought he was stupid. And, and like one of the things he said is like, people assume I'm doing things on purpose and don't understand what's going on when it's actually out of my control. And so you can imagine being in those classroom settings and not learning anything and being frustrated and feeling like, people thinking like, I don't belong here, that I can't assume, you can't learn anything.
Yeah.
It's just so hard, because
Yeah.
now seeing how much he's learned, like imagine like what he could have learned if he had been in those settings and had been exposed, to stuff.
To age appropriate curriculum.
Yeah. And, and so a lot of these things, he's self-taught. And,
Yeah.
once we enrolled him in college, like his second semester, he was asked to like introduce himself to a group. And he had spelled, my motivation for reaching my educational goals probably looks very different than most students at this college. I'm an autistic with no speech. I've recently learned to communicate using a letterboard, which transformed my life. I was denied access to an education my entire life. This makes me so sad. It was always my dream to attend college. A year ago, I was spending my days at a day program learning life skills that my body was never able to do because of my apraxia, which inhibits my ability to intentionally move my body. And then he said, I'd like to study neurology.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and then while at college, something came up in his second semester. He was going to, so his first semester, he took biology and a sculpture class.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Latin and a sculpture class.
Mm-hmm.
His second semester, he took biology and U.S. history. And the biology had a lab with it, which was hard for him because, following instructions and putting one drop or, 5 drops, or looking in a microscope and adjusting all the knobs. I was attending those with him because he qualified at that point for a personal assistant through our through the regional center here in California, but there wasn't anybody available. And I liked going with him. It was fun,
I can imagine.
to see what he was doing. But he started resisting going to the lab. And so finally we were able to ask him, why are you not going to the lab class? And he said, I like going to lab, but it's difficult for my body. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but my body takes over and the other students can't understand. It's frustrating and embarrassing. They assume I don't understand, and they question my ability to be in the class. And so then he said, I would like to make a presentation explaining how apraxia affects my ability to control my actions and words. And I'd like to do a live presentation with a letterboard. So we knew when the class first started that there was supposed to be at the end of the semester a group presentation. And I immediately went to the professor and I was like, probably not going to be able to do a group project. And they were so amazing. They had never had experience with a nonverbal autistic. And they were like, you know what? He can do his own presentation. That's fine. Just let me know what he wants to do it on. So not only did he, do this presentation, but he had picked his topic, and he had given us different quotes, to use to explain what his body was doing, and yeah, so school's tough. School's tough,
Yeah.
and they know all this time, before we started spelling, everybody's telling us like they're just in their own world, they're in a bubble, they don't get it, they don't know what's going on, and they are not only getting it, they're really feeling it and processing it in ways that we can't on a much higher level than we do. And it's hard on us when we feel that other people are judging us.
Oh, yeah. Just to think that he could feel his classmates questioning if he's supposed to be there. He could feel that. They didn't even have to say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, it was great that there were quite a few of the kids, young adults, who were very accepting and understanding and stuff. But yeah, I mean, like even me being there, like, I could see, and I tried not to insert myself too much, because I'm just supposed to be helping facilitate him getting from, place to place, not being part of the part of the whole experience. But yeah, it's hard as a mom to not be mama bear.
Yeah, I understand. Oh my goodness. Wow. But I do feel like I do think that it was cool that you were able to be a part of that and be able to help him instead of them, he could have had somebody else, but I think that's so neat that you were able to do that with him.
And it was funny because when he took the sculpture class the first semester, the professor was like, because she knew that I did art, from the little bit that we talked, and she's like, you need to take it too. You need to do these projects too. And so we actually asked Tyler, should mom enroll in the class and take it with you? And he was like, nope, it's my class.
Yeah, this is my thing. He just wanted it to be his own thing.
and I was okay with that. So yeah, there was a lot of times that I was helping him, get stuff done, but yeah.
That's awesome. So are there any misconceptions that people may have about Tyler or others like him? Is there anything that he has shared, trying to clear up these misconceptions?
I mean, Tyler has said that, it was frustrating, and, that and that he was misunderstood. But since experiencing spelling, one of the things he said, I'm sorry, I keep looking at, because I want to
totally fine. Yes.
I want to quote him, he has said that spelling has given my family a glimpse into my world. And that, people are finally getting a glimpse into my beautiful mind. And I mean, there's things that, we didn't know, like, you just don't know what your kids are into, right? It's like we base it on like what we think they're interested in because they're Googling. Like I remember seeing so many people saying like the Einstein videos, the baby Einstein. But that's not necessarily what a 23-year-old wants. And that wasn't something that Tyler was into, but like he was really into Legos and building Legos. And he's got a whole freaking Lego room. With thousands, like over 1,000 of the little minifigures that he's collected.
Wow.
But the other day, but at Christmas, he got a couple of Legos for Christmas. And he hasn't built them. And we asked him about it, and he said, I'm finally able to stop my body from building Legos. I haven't been into them for a while now. And it's just,
Wow.
so there's so many things that we have thought that they're into that we just don't know. Or like we asked him, like, what do you, what's something you want more of? And he's like, I want to listen to books. I don't currently, but I want to. And what type of books? And I had to look up what these were. Dystopian novels. And I'm like,
okay, I've never heard of that.
I've heard the word, but dystopian is like where the societies have just gotten so out of control, like Hunger Games, or like
Okay.
he specifically quoted Orwell and Huxley, which I hadn't even heard of that author.
Wow.
And so when I say these things, like those are some of those instances where people are like questioning the authorship of our kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can he be spelling something that I don't even know? Like, I don't even, I had to look up what are dystopian novels. And I was like, I think I know, but I don't really know.
Not sure. Yeah.
But he spelled it right too. Like,
wow.
like,
oh my goodness.
Of course he did. But if somebody had asked me to spell it, I would have spelled it, differently. So,
yeah.
Or for Christmas, we said, what do you want for Christmas? And and for your birthday, and this last year, he said, I want Bibles in ancient languages, like Latin, Greek, Arabic, or no, not Arabic, Aramaic.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Oh my goodness! Wow.
And I also want an Ethiopian Bible. So again, I'm like, what's an Ethiopian Bible? Like, how is this different? And so the Ethiopian Bible has I don't know, 20 more books than other Bibles. So he knows things I don't know. And
wow. That's amazing. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, you shared two things that I feel like are very important that most parents or people just don't think about. I have not, like in most of my interviews, have not been touched on. Very important to know that sometimes our kids might be like the apraxia. It's so deep that sometimes our kids are into things that we think they're into, but they really aren't.
Yeah.
That just gets me thinking because my son loves Mickey Mouse and Bluey right now. And now it gets me thinking, does he really? How do you know? Because he's not open yet. We don't know. But yeah, it's something to keep in mind for parents that have older kids that are still looking up kid things,
Yeah, things.
It just, that's a tell sign that maybe there really aren't.
We talk about presuming competence and teaching them things that are age appropriate, and yet then we're thinking like, but they still like the little baby stuff.
That's what they like. Yeah, we need to
and it's not
be aware of that.
And we also talk about their loops, whether it be verbal or body loops that they get into, physical loops, and so and I kind of equate it to that, like when we're driving a car, right? Is that we're used to heading home, but yet today we need to head here. And then we find like when we hit that freeway intersection, we're heading home. And I think that's what happens to them is that they've done it so many times, they keep going this direction and they're just like, okay, I'll just go home. I'll just go to Mickey Mouse, when it's not really where they wanted to go. They were intending on going this way. And Tyler has a lot of verbal loops, and he has many times, said to us, don't listen to my words. He's said, thank you for listening to my spells and not my words, which could disrail me. So, and it's really hard when your kid says 20 times, I want XYZ.
Yeah.
And that's not what they're really trying to say.
Want.
Yeah. And it's and Tyler is he says we're on the tipping point, which he has done little bits of opens with me, definitely semi opens, but he's not really open with me yet. I can't just sit down and say like, okay, answer 5 questions, but I can usually work 1 or 2 questions in, or into a session with him. But like the other day, we were doing a group spelling event. That's something that he had said that he wanted to do, is he wants to make friends. And so he had asked to do spelling with a couple of other spellers, where we got together just, with one person at a time.
Okay.
And then he said, I'd like to do more group events. And I was able to get a commitment from my church to get one of their rooms once a month. And we could probably do it more, but right now we've just decided once a month. And we're getting them together so that they can talk and,
hang out. Yeah.
Hang out. And, one of them even said, it's not so much about spelling with each other. It's just being together. Yeah. And it started from something that we did this summer, where we had done that with a few other spellers. And one of the things that my son had spelled was, he said, I really enjoy, and we referred to it as spelling camp. I really enjoy spelling camp. It makes you realize how hard it is to be surrounded by judgment all the time. It's nice to be with those who understand me. I wish I could always feel this accepted. Even though my spelling hasn't been accurate, I know that no one doubts my intelligence if my answers don't make sense. So it's just, and he said, I feel my entire life is blooming in ways I never imagined. And I'm looking forward to the next week. I'm so excited to be with other spellers and surrounded by those who know I'm intelligent, and it's just that, so building that community in this area is something that we're now working on, and, and trying to help find ways to just advocate for and spread the word. And I feel like every time I get somebody to get in front of a practitioner, I'm like, I'm so excited. Yes. I'm so excited. Yes. And Tyler wants that too. I mentioned to you that today he spelled up a storm. And part of what he said today was, I now have the ability to advocate for myself and hopefully soon for other non-speakers.
Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing. That's good to just know that he is so passionate about it, and know he wants others to have this. He's advocating for them.
Isn't that the thing that's amazing, is that so many of these kids and young adults, that now that they're able to share, they're not angry. They're just like, finally I have a voice, and finally my family knows me, and finally I have hope for my future, and I want to help everybody else. It just warms my heart so much, how much compassion and humbleness and I'm going to use a word oneness, because Tyler has used that a lot. That they feel, with each other.
That is amazing. It's beautiful. It's good to know that they have each other. They will always, be there for each other. They've been feeling lonely for a long time in their own bodies, and all they want to do is be there for each other, because they know how that feels.
Yeah.
So a lot of non-speakers have shared how their parents' emotions affect them. Has Tyler talked about that, shared any information about that with you?
Yeah. And it's funny because it started even just as, I was trying to start doing the boards with him, of just, Mom, just relax, like I can't do opens with you because you get too excited.
Yeah.
And when I was listening to telepathy tapes, I would listen to them so that he could hear them too. And I just told him many times, I said, if there's anything you want to tell me, I'm open. Like, he's talked a lot about God and about spirits and about Jesus and heaven. And so I'm like, whatever you want to tell me. And so he suddenly one day started talking about final episode. And I don't know if you heard, like they were asking, like, does anybody have anything to contribute? And one of the questions was, what do you want people to know about you?
Yeah.
And he said, and this is what he had spelled, and it was all about emotions. He says, I would like others to know how intensely I feel everything about them. There's no hiding from me. I feel your guilt covered in a smile, your exhaustion wrapped in a hug. I love your emotions and experience them alongside you. I need you to recognize and acknowledge how you feel no matter what, no matter how dreadful you might think they are.
Wow.
That really,
oh my goodness.
I'm here to help you feel and process them. We run into trouble when you try to feel something other, something you deem more acceptable. Then it's up to this unruly body to show you the errors in your way. It's a painful process for all of us. Feel without guilt, feel in your body. It's all valid. You'll feel more alive as a result. And so it's just,
wow. That is so deep and insightful.
and it echoes something that he
real.
spelled like a year before. One of his first poems. He, when every once in a while, his practitioner will just say, "What do you want to do today?" He's like, "I'd like to write a poem." And it was just a very short one. He said, "My heart is your heart. My heart is sorrow. My heart is hope." And I feel like what he said in that is kind of what he said in this whole paragraph that, that I.
Oh my goodness,
that,
it's
beautiful.
beautiful.
I'm feeling you all the time, and yeah, my heart is hope. My heart has always been hope, for him, and that we would figure it out. And I think that as moms, that's and dads, but that I mean, we just hope the best for our kids, no matter who they are. But especially when we don't even know them, it's just we hope that someday we will. And
yes,
I'm sorry, I'm tearing up.
oh yeah, it's beautiful. They really help us to bring us to like an authentic state, so that we don't hide anything, and we be true to ourselves.
Yeah. And here was something else that because over time, regularly I'm asking, like, what advice do you have for me? Like, I kept trying and trying and trying. And even though I knew I shouldn't listen to his words or his, pay attention to his actions, he has said, I want to spell, I want to spell, I want to spell. But as soon as I'd say, like, let's sit down and spell, he'd be like, he'd have some kind of verbal or physical reaction. And because of, he's hurt me in the past. And, so you never wanted to get things escalated. And even though he's been so great, especially the last year, there's still that fear, that PTSD.
Yes.
But one of the things he had said was, I always love spelling. Try to stay regulated when asking your opens. Trust your intuition. Your excitement is contagious and makes it hard for me to move to the letters.
Okay.
And that's something that, like, I don't think has been talked about as much either. And we are so close. Keep trying. You're doing great. Trust yourself. Take it slow. I mean,
oh my goodness,
such good advice.
That is literally what at least I need to hear. I really have been needing to hear that recently, because my son, I can relate to when you shared that he didn't want to spell with you at a certain time. My son is the same right now with me. He's spelling great with his practitioner, but at home I am trying, and it's not been easy. And it's like I'm forcing him, and But what you shared when he says um, that your excitement is contagious and, makes it hard for me to get to the words, that is the clearest I've heard it explained. And I'm hoping that there are other parents that can benefit from those words are very powerful. So yeah, and it's hard to not be excited. And really they're teaching us, like right now I'm just having to do a lot of internal work to calm down. I don't know
And
how, but I need to.
I think that that's what I've been trying to remind myself is, and again, like I'll see people saying like, you know, how long does it take and how do I get them there? And why won't they be open with me when they are with other people? And part of it I relate to that it's hard to answer questions, personal questions.
Yeah.
And when we talk about being open with their practitioners and with other people, they're not usually asking the questions that mom wants to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
We have, like it'll, his spelling coach will ask me like, what else do you want to ask? And I've got like 5,000 questions in my head. And that you can only ask one or two. Right.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like I'm almost 60. I've only recently been able to admit to my mom, some things that I felt,
Yes.
as a
Yeah.
teen or, a young woman growing up. And, here we are suddenly thinking like, okay, now they can tell us. And it's like, well, what are you asking any other child in your life? Like, are you asking them
Yeah.
these same questions?
Yeah.
And I think that when their practitioners are asking them, they're open to, but there's not as much emotion
There's no
behind.
emotion attached to it. Yes.
No, but a lot of times their questions aren't really emotional based either. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's how our kids answer it. Sometimes
Yes.
that is what they end up bringing to the table. And so we think,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now I can give you 500 more questions that are at
Yeah.
that same level. When we really just need to like stop and say like, you know what is, yeah, we need to take it slow. And so that's what I've been trying to do is like, okay, let me figure out how they've done it is how can I ask questions where you have an opportunity to answer, but there's not an expectation on trying not, to lower my expectation on my side
Yeah.
of the emotional content, that you're going to give me. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. And when I say let's spell, I keep reminding myself like, don't pay attention to his words. Just go sit down and pick up a lesson. Set the boards up on the table. Like just get things ready, and he
Yes.
will come. And he does. I mean, and that's the thing that I think too is that we don't have a specific time. We do have a specific place currently that we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But he also suggested that to try doing it in other places, like to go to the library, or something
Okay.
where maybe there's not the same like distractions. His brother's not getting ready
Yeah.
to go to work, or, his dad's not running in and out of the garage,
Yeah.
or just not the emotions associated,
Mm-hmm.
with the house.
Yeah. That's good insight.
So yeah, so it, and there's at least around here there we've had to kind of look because we don't like I don't like doing it with a round table. It's not good doing it with chairs that have rollers on it.
Yes.
We don't want it to be too busy of a place, so that there's not. So, but we have found 2 or 3. We have a lot of libraries around here, and so we found 2 or 3 that we can go pop into, and some of them even have rooms that can be a little more private. And
Good.
yeah, so it's just keep trying, and he keeps saying, I want to spell. Don't think that I don't want to spell. And no matter what the body says.
That's good to know. Yeah, I've heard that with 3 different people that I, opened up to. And they all said, but one stood out to me. They said they were at a spellers thing that they asked spellers, what do we do when it looks like you really don't want to do this? And she said that one of the spellers said, treat it like it's life-saving medicine. We want this. Yeah. So that was like, okay, wow. But
That's
still, it's hard.
Like I said, it's like, just, don't give up, be persistent, go through the motions, and just give them that opportunity to then settle into it. He also said advice I would give to families just getting started is to first trust your kids are intelligent even before they can prove it to you. And I know that there's a lot of parents who came to, finally after 1 or 2 or 10 lessons, that it finally clicks in, like, oh, they are really doing this, right?
Yeah.
Even my husband, he said it took me a while to be a believer. And so even before they can prove it to you is to trust that your kids are intelligent. And then he said, and practice through protests, which is what we're just talking about. Keep believing that they want to do it.
I love that. That's really good advice.
Just keep trying. I can tell you that every time I offer, I don't always follow through. I am nowhere close to perfect. But I keep trying, and ask the people around you to support you too. Like my husband would, if I said, okay, let's do spelling. And my son would be like, Dad, you too. Like he wants Dad to sit at the table. Even though Dad's not doing the boards, he wanted Dad in the room.
Just right there, yeah.
And he would kind of be like, like, I'd rather do something else, right?
Yeah.
And, so I said, one, I need you to, if he asks you to be there, please be there. Like he wants you at some point to pick up the boards again, and, and you need to follow the rules.
Yes.
Or the protocol or whatever you want to call it. But, but I said, I also need you to encourage me, like, have you done spelling with him today?
Yeah.
Or when he starts to protest, say, it's okay, we'll just do, 30 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
So that we're on the same page, and that it's not like, oh, he's starting to escalate. Don't let him go there. So everybody has to be together on it, and reminding him too, like, the emotions piece is that, that his emotions about everything catch
also affect it. Yes.
Yeah. The first few times that Tyler started doing the boards with my husband, both his practitioner and I were both like, he's really relaxed with him. Like he wants to, and his body language changed. Like he was very comfortable with him. Dad was he was the one who picked him up, took him to school and picked him up from school and took him to all the appointments and things. And has just always been his rock and supporter. So so when my son said, like, Dad, you're not following, like, a question was like, when is it important to follow protocols? And my son's answer was like, it's important to follow spelling protocols. When Dad doesn't follow the rules, it makes it harder for me to spell with everybody else. And I'm thinking, like, the only other people you spell with, there's only 2.
Yeah.
So we stopped him spelling with Dad. And here's something too, is that actually there was somebody new who's coming in to help us as a personal assistant. She's 18, 19 years old, friend of a family who also has somebody on the spectrum, and not a speller, but so she understands, she's lived with it her whole life. And the first day that she came in officially, to work with Tyler, he had his first conversation with her. How's your brother doing at school in San Diego? And, oh, he'll be home for Thanksgiving. It'd be great to see him. It was the craziest thing. Like, he'd never had an actual conversation with somebody. And then he said, I hope you don't mind me asking, but I want you to be a communication partner with me. I want somebody
Wow.
else. I want somebody else who I can talk with. And he's like, no offense, like get to his practitioner, but he's like, would you be good with that? And she's been great. And so I
Wow.
think that, like, the things of listening to our kids and giving them that opportunity to, to even pick who they're going to be friends with.
Yes. So what advice would you give to parents that are thinking about doing Spill to Communicate with their non-speakers and maybe they're on the fence about it?
My advice after having been through it is just do it. Is you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. I never thought that we would be where we are and how much better our lives would be if we hadn't discovered spelling. And my son agrees, is don't listen to the naysayers. Like he said, skeptics are just, most of them are just protecting, their pocketbooks, and we're trying to protect our kids, and we've had so much hope with so many different things, and this is 10,000% better than anything we've ever tried. And I would do it again and again and again.
Absolutely. So what is Tyler's opinion on the naysayers, the people that try to say that spelling is not a viable way of communication?
It's difficult not to take skeptics' doubts personally when so much is at stake. It affects our ability to get services and therapies that actually benefit us without our families having to foot the bill.
Wow.
It's also disheartening to think about those who remain in silence because their parents are receiving inaccurate information. So, and there's that piece of, like, he's just worried about everybody else, wanting to be an advocate for them. And I'm going to give a shout out again to, JB Hanley and Jamie, is that, he had said that that's somebody who he respects as being an advocate, was Jamie, kind of helping, like, push
others,
others, and being an inspiration for him. So
yes, amazing.
Yeah, so many things. Oh, and the quote that he said about Jamie was instrumental in bringing S2C to non-speakers.
Yes, and he right now is also helping others. He is also advocating for others to get spelling, to be able to spell and have a voice. That's beautiful.
So one of the lessons that Tyler did was on mycelium, which is part of mushrooms. And so there's the mushroom, and then underneath the ground, there's this whole, like, fibrous layer of roots or connections between the mushrooms that connect them to all kinds of plant life. And so the question was just, how would you describe the phenomenon of mycelium and mushrooms? And this is where, like I referenced before, like, his coach will throw out something that's, like, just answer in relationship to the lesson.
With that lesson,
and he goes it to a whole new level. Mm-hmm. And his answer was, mycelium and mushrooms are connected in much the same way that I imagine humans and their souls are connected. Human souls are like the mycelium, connected as one, while the mushrooms are like the individual people that they might appear as separate beings. However, we are all connected.
Wow, that is beautiful. And so
how much wisdom is in that? It's just, there's so many things like that when somebody talks to me about spelling,
that is beautiful.
Like, there's like 100 books that I want to share, but like that's that I'm just like, I could never even come up with that.
That is beautiful. Wow.
You question, if there's anybody who questions authorship, let me give you a bunch of his quotes that I'm like, no, I can't do that. His practitioner can't do that. His dad can't do that. So I don't know where you think he's getting it from.
No, I just know that the more the spellers continue to share their wisdom, the more they continue to have the opportunity to be heard and share their wisdom words, the naysayers, they're not going to stand a chance. It's undeniable. So my last question for you is, what is something that Tyler has taught you about life?
To never give up, to always have hope, to trust your gut. You know, we know what we need to do. And really, he has taught me, I've always believed in God, and he's taught me that there is so much more. And that, you know, to have compassion and be humble and to just do our best every day is all we can do. And I don't know, it's not life-changing, earth-shattering for other people.
It's
for
beautiful.
me, it is.
What our children are able to teach us, it is valuable. So yeah, I don't think anybody's thinking what you just said. Those words are really powerful. What our kids are teaching us is something that we would not have been able to learn otherwise, you know. And it's our children teaching us, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are all valuable lessons. Many people don't get the opportunity to learn those things.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much for being willing to share your story and Tyler's story. It's very inspiring, and his words are so moving, and I'm so thankful for your willingness to share. And if you can, please tell Tyler, thank you so much for sharing his voice and for advocating for others like him to have a voice. He is doing such an amazing job, and we are so thankful. And thank you, Mom, for doing all that you've done or doing for your son and advocating for him and helping his voice to be heard. You're doing an amazing job, and anybody that is listening to this story will agree that your story is very inspiring. It is helpful for me. I know there are so many things that I'm taking for myself from this episode. So thank you.
It's been so nice getting to know you too, and hopefully your son will be open and sharing amazing things too very soon.
Yes, I'm hopeful.
And as Tyler said, keep going through the protests.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the channel so you can get notified whenever I post new episodes. Until next time.